And now on Radio 4, the book at bedtime. Roy Chubby Brown reads The Tiger Who Came to Tea.
You're listening to Two Beers Until Phronesis, a philosophy podcast by students and graduates. Whether you've never heard of philosophy or have a philosophy PhD, we hope you enjoy these conversations as we discuss some of life's big questions over a few beers. Enjoy. So today I'm joined by Sam. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Zach.
Hello.
Hello, Nye.
Hello.
And hello, Kieran.
Hello.
Nice of you to turn up.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to talk about my dissertation, which was a dissertation I did about 8 months ago for my master's. And it was titled The Spectacle of Nature, an Exploration into the Ethics of Visual Appreciation of Animals in British Leisure.
I love the way you have to keep reading though, because you keep forgetting it.
Well, yeah, because fuck, it's a shitty title. So now you've read it, but I haven't read it, so I'm going to basically go through just some ideas that I picked out of it, conclusions and premises and headings and things, throw up a bit of discussion. But basically I wanted to look into animal ethics, but I had to narrow it down quite a lot. It's pretty overblown, I'm not proud of it, but I think there's some decent ideas in there that will start a nice informal discussion between us all. So first of all, what I did with the dissertation was I tried to look at a context in which to juxtapose modern attitudes to animals, so things like the David Attenborough stuff and the way we look at animals today, with something more antiquated and something more of a contrast. So I basically chose to look into Christian attitudes to animals. So do any of you guys know anything about theological attitudes to animals, kind of like the historical stuff? Like,
No, not really. No.
Not particularly.
no?
More or less just, like what Descartes said about consciousness in animals and that sort of thing. And animals as autonomous.
Oh yeah,
What's your things? They're living machines, or
yeah, when that sort of thing came about, and obviously like origin species and onwards, and how opinions changed about these sort of things. But
yeah, so the rationalist stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But before that, not really. No, apart from just use in sport and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So going back really far, obviously you guys are all familiar pretty much with Genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't dance. So the rationalist stuff that Nye mentioned kind of comes from, I think, there's a continuity from biblical texts and stuff before that. You've read Nietzsche, haven't you?
I've read a bit of it, yeah.
Yeah. Have you read any of the stuff he says about nature and Christianity's relationship with nature, the sort of demonization of nature?
Oh, well, it's all about, they're trying to, the whole point of Christianity is they're trying to remove themselves from nature, they're trying to be above it. I think that's his viewpoint, isn't it?
Yeah, to transcend it into, it's like a self-hatred, a hatred of your own nature.
Nature's a bad thing, and it's like the whole repression of sexuality. It's like, oh, that's our animal instinct, we need to make sure that we repress that, or we need to repress our will to violence and all those things.
Yeah, obviously that's talking about non-sentient nature, and sort of denying that. But I think that broader notion of hating nature, that's, I would argue, is embedded in Christianity. Kind of.
Why would you say that? Why do you? Let's dig on that. That's the good.
What's that?
Yeah. Where does that come from? Because I don't know anything about Christianity and their hatred of nature. Because the only aspects I know is the big G made all those animals.
Is this still from Genesis? Is this kind of
the
other?
What do you mean
passages?
by the hatred of animals? Or that's interesting to sort of figure out.
Okay, so I'd be interested to hear if any of you guys have ever picked up on this kind of stuff as well. But so in Genesis, for instance, we'll just stick with Genesis for now. Obviously, the idea of the original sin. So I'm talking about broad nature, not just animals.
Okay.
But the idea of the seminal sin of everyone is innately sinful.
Original sin, yeah.
Yeah, and they realise that they were naked and they get all embarrassed and stuff.
Yeah, there's a shame in the natural, which is undeniable. But also thinking of animals specifically, it's pretty much the only creation myth of its kind where it uses animals and language, animals that can speak. And I can't remember whether it's they the animals are unnamed or the animals lose their ability to speak or whatever. Basically, it's probably has the most negative view of animals innately.
Because they see it as a punishment or something.
Of all creation, yes. Well, for a start, the animals get punished alongside humans. There's very little reverence, even though they're capable of language. Compared to things like Native American myths, which are very similar, which have like anthropomorphized animals and animals capable of language, it's still probably the most negative creation myth of its kind.
Fair. I don't. I was waiting for stuff. I'm just trying to think about what other creation myths I know. And it's like literally fucking Tolkien just singing the world into being over like 4 incomprehensible pages that you don't know what's going on.
And you can link that to paganism.
But that's kind of like, isn't that the worship of like nature as a force? Whereas like Christianity
which
is
is why
like moving away from nature. As a thing.
Which is why there's this big dichotomy between Christianity and paganist religions. So, I think a lot of this bleeds into kind of misogynistic stuff, historical misogyny, the idea of women representing chaotic stuff, and
the mother that births nature.
Because obviously most of the religions we know today are patriarchal, not matriarchal. I can't think of a single example of
Hinduism.
You say that's
it's more neutral. I'd be saying anything, but
it's sort of a bit more balanced, isn't it? But Shiva's like
a lot of the gods have got
great
like
destroyer or whatever, and she's
5
like
dicks and a fanny sort of thing. There's a lot of androgyny. Yeah,
there's a lot of like you can tell it was made up in pubs and like Shiva's got like 9 phalluses.
Yeah.
And it's like every time you hear the story, it's like she's got another phallus.
I'm curious. Sorry, why do you think that the devouring mother is misogynistic necessarily?
We can talk about incels now.
No, I'm just curious. I'm not challenging it. I'm just curious what your
devouring mother is. That like what, like a Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, it's an archetype.
Yeah, because that's what you just said, right? You're on about the sort of devouring mother nature. Like chaotic.
Demonizing. Well, in some cases, these kind of things would be literally demonized. It would be associated with the devil, which I think is pretty negative. I mean, your view of chaos in misogyny is, well, in women is probably a little bit more nuanced than that. But a lot of the anti-paganist stuff that was going around in the Middle Ages pretty much was misogynistic. I don't think it was particularly nuanced. I don't know. So what? I mean, I'm not really familiar with that idea. What Jordan Peterson says on it.
Well, I mean, I think what he's talking about is Jungian archetypes.
Yeah, it's not Peterson's idea, it's Carl Jung's sort of archetype.
Right, which is something, so the idea of a lot of the Jungian archetype ideas come from this idea of, so a lot of religious texts and a lot of mytholic symbolism has stuff like gender built into it, stuff like gender, and you can see through how a lot of these mythoses manifest themselves, how stuff like certain aspects of feminine and masculine sort of permeate into different kind of characters or categories and sort of manifestations of one's psyche. And I think one important thing I think is to note in a lot of what Jung said about a lot of the stuff is something like, chaos is associated with like the feminine archetype, but it isn't innately a negative thing. Chaos is not innately negative. It's the same thing with like order is neither innately
it's the opposite
negative.
Force,
yeah, it's just the opposite force.
It's the necessary evil. It's like yin and yang.
Right. Because too much order is
not bad.
Because too much order is as equally tyrannical as too much chaos.
Yeah. That is a more nuanced view. But I'm not sure that, with all those caveats, was what a lot of people that used to fucking burn witches had on their mind.
Sure, I don't know much about that.
Is that what you're saying? Is like the burning witch is like the ultimate expression of misogyny. It's like the ultimate fear of.
Well, there's an interesting.
The witches were male as well.
Yeah, it's true, but
was it just anyone who's pagan or anyone who's just? You would literally just be like, I don't like that guy. I heard he was a witch.
It was basically just lynching for a lot of it, wasn't it? Just people they didn't really like who were just sort of offshoots of society a lot of the time.
I don't think
I get lynched so hard.
I don't think the trying of witches was necessarily a manifestation of misogyny, because there were a ton of executions that were carried out all through that period towards men. It just happened to be a common sort of persecution that people made of dodgy women in the village at the time. You know, that was just a way of categorising them at the time. I don't think that's necessarily misogynistic. Plenty of people were killed for unjustifiable means at the time, not truly justifiable anyway.
Yeah, I'm linking it more with academic, well not academic, but intellectual, theological ideas, like the representation of women in the Bible as well.
Well, but Eve is the one who.
Yeah.
She basically did the bad thing. She got the apple. So you're saying the Bible's sort of misogynistic because it's Eve who's fucking.
Yeah, and the Judaic tradition. There's obviously another woman sat around with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, red pill.
Name and shame.
But she was basically made out to be demonic and cast out, and she was basically this big demonic force and depicted very.
Fucking hell, this is like...
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, this is like when you find out about the three wizards in Harry Potter and you're like, what? You're going to drop that in the second last film?
But, yeah, so...
What's he just doing favours to religion by comparing him to Harry Potter?
Oh, it's the same thing, same archetypes, isn't it?
Pretty nice, mate. Harry Potter is...
It's just...
loads of stuff out of missed.
Harry Potter's Jesus
It's fucking
confirmed.
legit, it's like the collection of things. But I didn't realise there was another person in the Garden of Eden. That's fucking cool.
I mean, there wasn't, because no one was there really. But.
What do you mean?
Whoa! You telling me religion's not a accurate scientific depiction?
You're telling me Genesis isn't literal?
Gonna
I listen to 4 Sam Harris videos and I know how the universe works now.
Talking snake.
Sam Harris is fucking talking snake. I swear to Sam, if you listen to this, I'm calling you out.
Yeah, so...
I actually love Sam Harris, please don't beat me up.
Yeah, same. He's a good geezer.
He's pretty good.
He's already heard this and he's flying on his own self-righteousness.
He's just
like hovering over the ocean.
He's just giving me a year free subscription to his Waking Up Mindfulness app, so he's not going to be happy that I've been dissing him like low key.
What do you mean he gave you?
You're going to
he gave me personally.
His company. But
I emailed him and he got back to me and said, Kieran, I'm a big fan.
But yeah, you're going to sit down and he's going to go, I just want you to shut your eyes. I hear you been talking shit, Kieran. I want you to think about the worst things that ever happened to you. And you try and stop meditating, you're locked in like fucking like that guy in was that terrible film he's sweating and he's seeing his kids, Interstellar, and he's just like you see Sam Harris's voice gets aged and you wake up.
Matthew McConaughey in a black hole.
Yeah, literally, you're Matthew McConaughey, you're getting fucking destroyed by Ham Saris. You were talking about misogyny, we got sidetracked. We got some energy in the room now. We talked about Sam Harris being a snake.
Yeah, so a lot of this comes from so this kind of metaphysics and ontology comes from, as well as the Abrahamic traditions, it comes from the Greek philosophy that was picked up by people like Aquinas.
Yeah.
And it's kind of overly rational, if that's a phrase you can use, reductionist then, idea of what animals were.
What did he think they were?
Just fucking nothing. And of course, at this point...
He's like, that farmer, he thinks they made a string. you know that bits of the fast shows that go on the fox hunt, it's like, oh, they don't feel nothing. They just get pulled apart and they're like, made a string. It's like just going to talk about fox hunting.
What I mean is like a hierarchical placement of them at the very bottom. They actually drew like fucking lists and things.
That's pretty cool.
And Christianity adopted this, but also this echoed like a massive cultural shift from having wilderness be the revered mystical place to having all of its mysticism stripped and pushed into the order of civilization, and the church became the centre, which is very different. If you go to Japan, you get those folk religions. You can walk out for miles and miles and miles and then find a fucking old tree, and that is the centre of their religion. which is something we've lost, I think.
But is that not just like because they couldn't keep buildings up?
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's basically
Well,
your religion just adapts to the scenario. So like they can,
Yeah, of course,
they
it
couldn't
does.
smack up a cathedral because then it'd be too many Godzillas.
Yeah.
So Godzilla just loves chewing on fucking monasteries.
So I think one of the fundamental differences, so paganism thinks that there's something innately spiritual and innately
Good about
good
nature.
in animals and nature, whilst Christianity, animals are basically just a conduit.
But isn't that just the whole noble savage stupid idea? Where it's like, oh yeah,
Is that another Jungian archetype?
no, it's I don't know who he is.
I think it's a postmodern.
Yeah, it's a
thing.
postmodernist idea, like
70s.
Noble savage.
where it's like if we didn't have civilization, if mankind wasn't there, we'd all just be living in harmony.
Yeah, it's
And
this
it's like,
nature.
and they disproved this by just basically going to Ireland. There's like that massive fucking like island where they would just like kill like 1 out of like 5 people, and they went like, oh yeah, we human beings have done horrible things because we.
Do you mean
we
like
think we've done
the
wars.
anti-natalist stuff you see on Facebook when people are like, humans are a horrible species?
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
It's
it's like, you're a human, you fucking idiot. What do you mean?
It's that idea where there's those people who think they're like, where I think I read it in Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate, and it was like
Right.
talking about how it's sort of like the blank slate, the tabula rasa thing. Like we are just like completely whatever we could be as programmed by society, and if we didn't have a society, we'd all just be like, you know, chilling out and happy. Despite the fact every civilization they come across, like it just does like basically the opposite, and like murder rate and like, war rate goes up through the fucking roof.
I think a lot of people kind of romanticize the idea of what nature actually is.
100%.
And I think that this whole sort of David Attenborough, like you mentioned earlier, that sort of culture of, look at nature. And don't get me wrong, nature has so much potential for beauty, but it has so much potential for devastation, destruction too.
Ruthless.
And the thing is, people seem to forget that the things that we have provided for ourselves as a species are actually very good, and they've led to us thriving as a species. I think it's very interesting that people seem to treat us as not being animals.
Well,
They
like
talk about
science,
humans like we're kind of separate from animals, like animals are as good. It's like,
Well,
We're machines.
I agree and disagree. There's pros and cons to nature.
quads.
Games. No, I completely agree with that, Kieran. I think a lot of, particularly in Britain, where we are pretty much top of the chain, we have very few natural disasters in this country, and we also have, very few animals and insects that can kill us.
Apart from
effectively.
bricks, is it?
And people who are, exposed to these
So apart
deadly.
from Brexit. Yeah, so there's danger and stuff in nature, but
I think we're so far fucking removed. Like we come into contact. I think people who go like, "Oh, isn't nature wonderful?" Or people who don't know anything about nature. They have not been exposed to it at all, and they live in like a city, and
They're too institutionalised.
and their experience of nature is through documentaries, is through like.
we'll get onto
It's
a
through
lot
books.
of these ideas.
And it's like the more you're immersed in it, you realise, oh yeah, we are still an animal. We are not above all this.
No,
And
I
it's
just
like,
want to tie it back, because what you're all talking about is links right back into the Jungian archetype thing, with nature being associated mythologically with chaos, because nature is associated with chaos for very good reason, because nature is the weather changing suddenly and blowing your house down.
Yeah.
It's that
Sure.
it's stepping on a
It's
branch
the-
and getting an infection in your foot and just dying of an infection.
there's that John
You know,
Paul
it's-
Sartre. There's that nausea thing where it's like his big freak out is the realization that all of this civilization, if people stop keeping it up, will just be devoured by nature. And he like sort of goes across a street, and the house hasn't been sort of looked after, and it's just been completely overgrown. It's this idea that we're just like in the middle of this just thing that it's not like an evil, but it just has no regard for us. There's no moral regard.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it would
Yeah,
just
but it's.
overtake us if
Yeah,
you don't constantly
it's
maintain the
chaos,
civilization.
I mean, yeah. So
Then it's weird to be like, oh, maybe we should like help that out.
yeah, the whole socks and sandals mentality. Yeah. Of fucking
Yeah.
all nature is great, but I think we have to unpack this. We have to unpack this a little bit, because we're sort of lumping in fluffy animals with hurricanes and talking about it all
it's all nature.
broadly.
Though.
Yeah, sure, but like you said, we're nature. So if we're going to make any sense of the term, we kind of have to separate between ideas like nature, wilderness, and
Yeah. Hurricanes and fluffy rabbits.
yeah. There's keeping harmful elements at bay, which are not. I mean, yeah. Are we saying that diseases are nature?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So then we have to kind of narrow conceptually a lot of things down.
Should we talk about zoos?
Well, just to, whilst we're on the negative historical stuff, you ever heard of something called fox tossing?
No.
I imagine
Is that what those Eton boys do?
that's how you get into
David Cameron's hazing initiation ceremonies.
You don't toss off.
Cameron, come toss this fox.
That was a pig, mate.
Right, I imagine he smells like hot fox cum. You get a little bit too close, he's still got it in his hands.
Smells like a bacon sarnie.
Well, what is it though?
It's where a
Fine.
bunch of posh people in the 17th century basically they don't use the stop using visual comedy.
So I didn't want to speak over you, but I also want to get this
yeah.
idea of throwing a fox in the air and shotgunning it.
No, it's not a clay pigeon. Well,
That'd be
Shooting
so
it in the face.
That'd be so rogue.
It's not a clay pigeon, it's a fox. That makes it worse.
Well, it is
Messier.
it is basically similar. So a bunch of posh people in a estate will basically have a load of blankets in an enclosed lowered space so the foxes can't escape. They'll release several foxes and everybody will stand around with blankets and pull the blankets when a fox goes over a loose blanket, and they'll pull it tight so that the fox gets trampolined up into the air. And everyone thought this was like the most fucking... You see a couple of pictures of it, you do sort of go, huh. But but the fact that like they were laughing at specifically, according to accounts, the animals actually being injured, and when people the animals would often, they do it with badgers and other animals as well, but the animals would often kind of fight back, and people would get their hands cut open, they get tetanus and shit. And all for the, it's a sport.
There's nothing to do back then, really, in the 17th century.
Yeah,
Wake up, get the bubonic plague, die a horrible and painful death.
We've got to call a 9 there, because it's like, think about how much damage a fox would actually do. It's like it's like you would fucking hate foxes. I was going to talk to you about the badgers. Be like, oh, actually, fuck badgers. It'd be like one of those things where I imagine back in the day, they'd be like, oh, we actually fucking hate foxes. They come in there and they just like decimate our chickens, and we kind of like,
my chickens.
I think there's a couple of interesting points that you can pick up there, though, because I think first thing is that you've got this kind of detachment on both ends of the spectrum. You've got the people who are fox tossing or whatever it's called, who are clearly very detached from the idea that foxes are a species just like humans, and that they are
the ontological,
they're
the
valuable.
ontological distinction from
Precisely.
completely. Yeah.
On the other side of the fence, you've also got these people who are completely not tree huggers, like my mother, who is very, very kind of dispossessed with the whole human race as a whole, and is on the opposite side of the spectrum, the kind of person that cries when a dog dies in a film but cheers when the humans get killed. You've got this kind of odd sort of...
it is watching Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, it's absolutely loving life, yeah.
Yeah, it really is odd. Like, people who hate humans and love
self-hatred.
animals, yeah.
But you've got both sides of the spectrum, and I think both are equally quite bizarre, and it's trying to find that middle ground, and I don't really know what the right solution is there. But also,
this was basically what I was trying to look at with my dissertation. I never truly got onto it though, because I got bogged down with historical stuff. So yeah, it'd be good to unpack some of that.
I think what Sam said though as well, I think some of the resentment, I mean, perhaps not an excuse for playing games with animal lives, but I think some of the resentment towards foxes. So
becomes a factor.
So Dad and Mum obviously have got like a small holding, and they keep a lot of chickens, and the carnage that foxes can, and I'm sure Nye's probably seen it as well, the carnage that a fox can wreak on livestock is savage. They will behead the chickens, and what they usually do is they won't come back the next day to eat the corpses they've left, because the humans will have come up, investigate, and the scent will be on it. So to the kind of untrained eye, foxes just look like these mindless killers that decapitate chickens and then bugger off.
Yeah.
That is where perhaps some of this hatred could have stemmed from.
Probably.
And it's like, at that point and also it's like, it's a bigger deal back then. Like, those chickens would be like the chickens for the towns.
Yeah, of course.
And you couldn't just like, you'd have to like then go find some other eggs, find some other chicks, raise those for how many years. So it's like,
well, a lot of these people were very
comes
gentrified, and they probably had the means to get by. But anyway, you mentioned two things that were interesting. Well, you mentioned a lot that was interesting, but the ontological distinction, and you said the untrained eye.
Yeah.
So I think both those things have shifted in the last kind of 500 years, which manages us to move away from things like cock fighting and goat throwing and all the other examples of things. Goat throwing.
Only boring people moved away from that. Not
Trout licking.
Trout licking. There's octopus wrestling. So
you longhorn boys are a different breed.
Spider bait.
I think humans just try and make every animal fight.
There's a common
that's
thing.
scorpion versus tarantula thing.
You name an animal and
Those are great.
And they would just do it in like Morocco. They wouldn't have chickens to fight. They just fight scorpions and tarantulas.
This ontological thing, I think, shifted after Darwinism kind of set in, because we realised there wasn't this big metaphysical distinction. We weren't mandated to protect these lower beings, or control them and look after them. They're literally just a product of the ecosystem, like us, product of natural selection. And I think the whole untrained eye thing also factors into it. You said, because I think a lot of, you can actually track the idea of pets, the practice of keeping pets, with the burgeoning interest in natural history in the Victorian era. Both of those things coincided. The more people learned about animals, the more they were compassionate towards them. I think there's a strong correlation between those two things. So I think basically the reason we've adopted this kind of Attenborough-esque view that we have now is because of education and the massive blow to the metaphysical and ontological ideas of Christianity. Not that I think, and this is something I went out of my way in my dissertation to highlight, not that Christianity is fucking awful towards animals. That's the chauvinistic idea is really isolated into just a few niches and things. That's like the worst example possible of what Christianity can be. Most of it is pretty good, but I kind of take qualms with the idea that we only like animals because it's mandated to us by the divine.
Yeah.
That like animals can just be intrinsically kind of good to look at, and we'll get into what that means as well.
Yeah. Did you pick up on any passages that did shed animals in a favourable light?
Well, yeah, there were a few. So God uses a donkey to talk.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Donkey carries Jesus all the way, and Mary. And
but these things aren't good in their own right. They're good because they're serving a greater purpose.
It's a tool.
Yeah, they're literally just tools. And
utilitarianism.
Yeah, exactly. It's very utilitarian, and I think that's not the best example of animal.
They should be admired and
affirmation.
respected for being a thing.
Yeah, but then obviously
What about Disney?
using animals as
I just mean using them as like the ultimate nice thing, isn't it? So it's like back in...
Yeah, they give a lot of children unrealistic expectations of the good animals.
That was the point.
Bad.
You put human characteristics onto animals and just be like...
Yeah.
And then suddenly that's like nicer and more approachable.
Anthropomorphism of the animals. Yeah, David Attenborough does it a lot. The language he uses, I made fun of it in the Blade Runner podcast. We were talking about, I don't know how the fuck we got onto that, but we were talking about the fact that David Attenborough constantly talks about animals as if they're like dating. And I think it's a nice tool to use, and I think it does.
It helps people relate, doesn't it?
And that's all it is. And if you take it as that, perfect. That's
storytelling.
Yeah.
And it just goes, the praying mantis there. You know when you've had a bad date and you eat your fucking husband's face. This mother tarantula is so lovely. She decides to let her children eat her alive.
There's no emotion. He's just telling you the facts. He's not putting his personal opinion. He's showing you that's what's happening. The tarantula is killing the other tarantula and eating the father.
But I don't think
and laying eggs in its brain.
Yeah, I don't think it's meant to be nice. I think it's just meant to be interesting.
It's just a thing, yeah.
And I think there's an innate interestingness to it. I think it's a good thing to watch. It doesn't have to be nice or bad because morality doesn't really come into it because it's animals.
But I don't like the anthropomorphisation of it. Where it's just go like, those cheaters are cuddling.
Well,
to be fair, he doesn't just do that. He does talk about other things, and like people, a lot of people who are into nature will watch like storm documentaries and things as well. And
I think the planet Earth live things. Not the live is a shit, but Planet Earth is a fucking amazing series. It's the best series BBC have ever done. So good.
They are fantastic, but I think that the problem is it's not the fact that David Attenborough is using these methods as like to storytell, because David Attenborough, he's a smart guy, he's studied wildlife for Christ knows how long. He can tell the difference, he understands what he's doing. It's the people that don't make that distinction and they instantly kind of interpret it as this sort of romanticized idea of animals just being wonderful, just being magical, and you will get those idiots that push the bar too far, that try and bloody climb over the fence at the zoo, that try and get close to lions on safaris because they remember all the positives they saw in this sort of Hollywood edited sort of show.
I don't know.
Selection, mate.
I don't know, Brian. No one's climbing out of a jeep and going, "Oh look, it's Simba." There's something in the core of you just goes, "Oh yeah, we don't go near that."
People pissing around with circus animals, all sorts. And I'm not saying that David Attenborough is solely responsible for it, but I think
David Attenborough's a bear beater.
Yeah, I think it's this widespread sort of disassociation with just how dangerous animals and nature can actually be.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I saw a post on Facebook, and there was a guy and a woman with a tiger in their house, and it was like their pet.
Yeah.
Now I imagine.
Yeah, but
I don't want to.
That's a predator.
This is what everyone. This is what everyone was saying. But I imagine they were probably breeders, or maybe it couldn't live in the wild, or there was probably some reason why they had a fucking tiger other than they were rich enough to afford one. It was probably, they were probably, I don't know, there's probably some kind of reason, but a lot of people were jumping on the bandwagon, oh, it's a predator. Now, some of the people who were a little bit more cynical like yourselves, they were like, okay, this is a fucking predator, get away from it. Some of the other people were like, no, this is an incredible creature, don't cage it.
Well, that was my point. I wasn't saying this is a predator, go over it. I was saying an animal like that whose entire millennia of genetics and evolution has been designed to be a hunter. It's a horrible thing to have that.
Well, I mean, tigers don't eat each other. If you know enough about animal psychology, you could probably keep one safe if you act like a fucking tiger. I don't know. Maybe studying it. Maybe,
I don't know, bro. There's been some.
Maybe he's studying it. Maybe it's not safe in the wild. Maybe it's raised in captivity. Maybe there's nowhere for it to go. Maybe it's breeding. Maybe it's not healthy. I don't know.
Have you seen those polar bears that eat their own cubs? There's a mad study about polar bear cannibalism, where they just go, oh yeah, here's a dependable source of nutrients, so they just eat their cubs and they eat other people, and it's just they don't see things in the there's not,
you don't see that on a glacier.
There's not we always think because we can only think about things thinking the way that we think. And that's, I know I said the word think about 16 times.
Profound statement.
Yeah, bro.
We can only think of things in the way that we think. Sam Blusted.
Are you fuck you?
That's the first thing you said in about an hour.
It's just rinsing it. That's because that's the first truly profound thing that's been said. it's like we have to anthropomorphize. I can't fucking say that. Anthropomorphize everything. So it's just we can't just go, oh yeah, polar bear will go, oh I'm hungry. I'm pretty hungry. All my cubs there. That's food. I'm gonna eat. I think that to an extent we can though, and there are ways into that. No, not really actually. There are ways to start to empathise with other creatures. But even like a spider, you can say. The spider's just impulse.
Yeah, I know.
Literally just stimulus reaction.
Not just as a way of explaining it. You could say, oh, they feel pain or whatever, even though it's probably just a reaction to stimuli, we don't know.
Do they feel pain then?
Exactly, but
we have this neuron.
It's just a useful kind of, it's more of an analogy than anything else, yeah.
Then how is that helpful if you say daddy longs feel pain but doesn't actually have the central nervous system?
Where do you draw the line?
So it doesn't actually feel pain. You're literally saying that there's you're literally saying this thing which doesn't feel any of the things that we're going to say that it does feels these things because we feel these things.
So
you're giving it so many qualities. Is this daddy long legs trapped in the window? Is it a sad daddy long legs?
No,
or is it just going
get that, but
impulse response
I
failure?
do think projecting in that way is useful. So we were saying the other day that that rationalist idea between Christianity and now, we had this surgence of rationalism and people like Descartes thought that animals were just automata, they were just things, objects. Now he's basically said shit like, when you close a door it squeaks, that's the same as when you tread on a cat. It makes
That's so good. I love that.
It just makes a noise. My objection to that. Many objections.
Well,
to that.
missus. Makes a bloody noise, doesn't it?
She makes a noise when I slam her tread in the door.
My objection to that is even if it was, why would you want to do that?
Isn't he technically right that we are just machines? It's like he just couldn't. Yeah. He just didn't know.
He was talking
how
about
precise we are.
consciousness specifically.
Yeah, he was saying they're not conscious. So
they don't have consciousness.
I'd like to just go back to something some said, and this isn't my view. I just think it's a really interesting point.
Though.
No, the point is, why do that anyway?
Where do you draw? Yeah. Where do you draw the? And I'm not saying because I know the answer to this. It's a genuinely interesting thing I've thought about a lot. Where do you draw the line on what is classed as like being a living thing that is of value, and where do we stop that? Because people seem to so take for it, like if a cat walks into this room and you don't want it to be here, right? You're not going to boot that cat in the head and stamp it into the ground, are you? Unless you're a psych, I mean, no, I might, but but you're not going to necessarily do that. If a fly comes in here, you're not going to think twice about it.
Yeah, this is interesting because obviously bush trucker trials and stuff in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Yeah. No one gives a fuck about eating bugs, live bugs.
And I think even more interestingly is because I don't know if this is credible, but I have read that there was a study done that has shown that plants actually respond to being bitten and eaten, which in a sense can be interpreted as feeling pain.
Yeah.
So where do you draw that line? And I don't know the answer to that.
Have you seen this thing about plant communication? We'll get onto you're going to talk about mushrooms.
No, I was going to talk about
We're going to talk about DMT.
We're going to talk about mushroom communication, but there's also like plants also share nutrients between other plants. So there'll be like a tree network, and they'll realise one tree has less nutrients.
Like that film Avatar.
Ents, mate.
It's fucking mad.
Fucking ends, mate.
Yeah,
Many of these trees are my friends.
Just like, yeah. So what happens if we go, our trees just perceive the world 100 million times slower and they feel pain, and it cut to man with chainsaw and it's just like, oh yeah, that's like a thing. We don't understand our own consciousness. How the fuck can we understand the consciousness of a tree?
Well, I would say you start by saying, well, what similar qualities do you think that certain creatures have that we know are mechanisms which create most of the ways in which we have phenomenological experiences, like pain, which is derived from a nervous system.
Yeah, so
we can have clues as to like at least what kind of phenomenological experiences certain things are having, based on the fact that if something doesn't have eyes, it's not having the experience of seeing. If something doesn't have a nervous system, then at least it's reality. You know, even if there is some sort of conscious experience going on in some sense, it's like that does not necessarily relate in the same way it would to us in terms of like suffering.
It's like the Daddy Longings things. You use like, not that you would do this because this is an actual thing you do if you're a fucking psychopath. But you pull a leg of Daddy Longlegs, it's just cool.
Yeah,
but I think it's useful to adopt this idea, even with what we might class as semi-sentient nature or whatever, so like trees and things. Like, I think it's useful to think of them as living things as well, and to.
Well, they are living things.
They're living things, but they're not sentient.
They're not conscious. But why does that matter?
But yeah, precisely.
Why does that make less valuable?
Why is it?
It's an interesting question.
Why is that like the flip thing where it's like Daddy Long is being said, oh, like a tree, not sentient. Fuck that. It's like.
Value is a different thing. So you could say, well, they're still valuable because you could say, well, either life has inherent value, blah, 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 or we could say, well, it has value because certain aspects of preserving biodiversity, etc., are valuable. But in purely making an ethical argument as to whether something, it's right or wrong to cut a tree down, in terms of talking about it in terms of like inflicting suffering upon an agent, I don't necessarily think that. I think you can make a fairly good argument based on the fact that if something is sentient or not, you can at least infer something about perhaps whether this thing is capable of going through suffering. And you can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
But that's a start. So we can say that at least cutting a tree down is probably not inflicting the same kind of suffering that killing a dog would. And I think most people would agree that that's
just because it's not the same doesn't mean they're not equally bad. And this is the problem. Just because they're not directly comparable doesn't mean that they're both still a shared experience to a degree. So a leaf dies and a human dies. Doesn't mean that a leaf may experience death the same way a human would. that they've both
Yeah.
experienced it, and it's still something that happens to both of those things. So it's like, what kind of what,
that
what's-
appeals to a much more transcendent view.
Yes,
like
That's more like a
you're now,
panpsychist view.
yeah, you're now
Well,
coming.
this is getting a bit
Yeah.
Asian now.
Yeah, you're now coming
what's-
out of the human experience and looking down on it objectively, which I think is a very strange thing to do with ethics, considering we are.
It's not my
think-
view.
well, I
It's
think-
not
Yeah,
my view.
I
It's
know,
just
I know, I know.
it's just a curious point that I have thought of before.
Yeah, no,
It's like,
I-
what basis do we form that kind of this is good,
Where's
that's
the
not
ethical line
as
drawn?
good. It's like, okay, we'll go with this one. That one's actually how are we making that decision? Because I genuinely don't know.
I think the ethical
Let's-
line is
yeah.
drawn based on societal changes over tens, hundreds of thousands of years. Think of animals that are useful to us,
like
dogs.
like cats. You're not gonna,
Absolutely, yeah.
You're not going to stamp on a cat because the cat kept your
Yeah.
mice out of your grain for like 10,000 years.
Yeah, so
I
instinctually.
I think it all just goes back to utilitarianism.
Yeah.
But again,
why
it's-
do people still in this country? Why do most, well, not most, but why does some people? You'd think, oh, it's an irrational fear of house spiders or so, because it stems from when we used to live in tropical, when people still live in tropical conditions. When if a spider enters your hut and bites your child can die.
Yeah.
That's why people are still afraid of spiders. Effectively,
Yeah,
most people would think
also
someone's
it
not
has-
whacking it with a shoe.
It's very
Not a dog.
very non-human looking.
Very unpredictable
yeah.
movement. Very yeah.
So yeah, a lot of this is obviously rooted in empathy, but for a lot of periods of history, this empathy just didn't and couldn't extend to animals because we didn't yet know that they were on the same level as us, that they could even be that. We were told what their place was. They were lower than us. We were higher, and that was never truly challenged, not in any kind of conclusive way, until secularism came along and science came along.
Right, and I would say that certain empirical methods can at least give us some indications as to what potentially certain things are internally experiencing, and that's why I would say there is definitely a distinction between something that would potentially have a nervous system and something that doesn't.
Yeah.
And why you can say, well, and at the end of the day,
it'd be different.
that isn't necessarily saying anything about the internal conscious experience, even if there is one of something like that. That's a different argument. But the point is, when we're talking purely about inflicting suffering on things, like if I break my thermostat, I don't think it suffers pain because I don't think that it's capable of suffering any form of pain or having that kind of experience. And I think the same thing is true of microbes. I don't think microbes feel pain.
Yeah.
And I think you can build
How do
up
you
that
know?
argument.
Prove it.
My query is the distinction between positive or like this
Right.
inferred idea of positive and this inferred idea of negative. It's not the distinction per se, it's the connotation we add to that distinction afterwards that's the really interesting point, I think. Of course there's a distinction between the two. It's like what you deduce from that as being that's good, that's bad, that's not so good. That is a priority, that is not as much of a priority.
So in terms of how we are valuing...
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting. And
Different things,
I genuinely don't know. It's stumped me for a long time, and I still don't know.
It's what constitutes. So I think
I'm throwing a lot of disclaimers out here.
descriptively we can say that animals have become subjects while they were in the past objects. But yeah, characterising why that change has occurred, exactly what gives something the status of an ethical subject is it's
And I don't also think that that's necessarily the case across all cultures, and not necessarily the case across...
no, of course. I'm looking at Western.
Yeah, of course, because like you said, perhaps that is an artifact primarily of things like Christianity or whatever. But
Yeah, I mean that's a general. That's a general.
like
term
you said,
anyway,
I mean, like you would mention, like paganism or whatever already has a lot of that inbuilt respect for certain things, and like in Hindu cultures where they're just like cows are sacred and certain elements of nature are completely sacred.
the cows aren't sacred because it's another god chose them or anything. Cows literally are just sacred in Hinduism, which is interesting because Christianity doesn't get that. It never gets that.
It's because Christianity is very it is very utilitarian, though, isn't it? It's just like with the way it works.
I like to think of it as relational. Like everything is sort of put off onto the divine.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing inherently affirmed about the goodness of humanity. I think that's probably an overly bleak way of looking at
Or in
Christianity.
Christianity, I don't know. I think there's like the original sin is like the thing we're always supposed to be making up.
Well,
for,
it's premised on a very negative idea. It sets out.
you're not good
basically-
enough. You need to be better than people before you and who you were.
Yeah, but before we get to the idea of why we classify animals in certain ways and things, and whether they have suffering, because that's basically what a lot of our ethics is built on, and take inspiration from people like John Stuart Mill and try to ground whether things could suffer, and that can be the basis of our ethics. I think if something feels like it's alive, it's probably just not a good idea to attack it. And I even give that to inanimate objects. Like, I think there's a personal barrier first, this existential relationship with yourself. Don't fucking get angry and smack the shit out of things, especially if they, have 4 legs and 2 eyes. Like, whether they can feel or not, whether they can technically feel. Just because they can't technically feel, if that's what you think, that's still not a good...
Right, there's psychological reasons why
Yes.
it's not
Yeah,
necessarily a healthy thing to be...
Morality of not kicking things.
Yeah, going
Yeah.
around kicking things.
Cryptids are things that are kind of on the edge of culture
like
and stuff.
Bigfoot?
Yeah, like Bigfoot.
Okay, I got what you mean though, yeah.
Yeah, so like Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and the fucking Bodmin Beast, and all these things. And I think, the
Forest
idea...
panther.
Yeah, what?
The people thought there was a
Oh, the Forest of Dean.
Yeah, because people don't know the difference between perspective and a giant cat. I saw a cat sitting on their windscreen and they were like, fucking hell!
Yeah, I think that's part of an attempt to sort of mysticize the world, basically, the wilderness, and the idea that there are still things and things out there that are undiscovered.
Well, there are 100%. It's like people thought giant squid were like a complete myth, and then like Japanese fishermen just kept getting them in their nets. And like, whoa, that's pretty fucking mental.
Yeah. What's the one that's... I mean, some of the things in the examples in Britain aren't that particularly interesting. They're all just like big boars, big panthers. I think that's probably to do with the fact that we have no megafauna. Like, we don't have fucking giant sloths anymore, so...
Yeah.
Did you say sloth or sloth?
Sloth.
I see sloth.
But then I say someone is being slothful, so it's like you mix it up.
Okay.
Syntax error.
Yeah, actually, when I talk about sin, I tend to say sloth.
Yeah, so
But when I talk about the animal, it's sloth.
I would say it's a sloth on a tree, and it was like behaving with sloth.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, so megafauna. It's like drop bears in Australia, where they have like those.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what?
We don't
You ever
have...
heard of the drop bear?
No.
It was like this fucking legit bear that would just drop out of a tree and maul you to death.
Sick.
Yeah, and there's
No,
like
I'm
loads,
googling tonight.
there's like loads of stories about it, and they found like a skeleton in the cave of like basically just a big koala bear that ate people. It would just drop out of a tree and eat you.
That's sick.
And there's loads of like Aboriginal tales about like the drop bear and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Pretty awesome name as well.
I think earlier on, actually, you mentioned something about the only animals we see are representations. Like, you mentioned
pets.
Disney.
Or pets. It's like
Yeah.
all the representations we get are David Attenborough saying, "Oh, look at those cheetahs cuddling," and then like fucking Baloo the bear.
Yeah, so this idea that there's like a physical barrier between us and wilderness.
Yeah, 100%.
Although I don't think the idea of wilderness is like 100% legit. I don't think there's any area of the world that's genuinely wild, genuinely untouched.
I don't know.
Lots of
There's
areas
bits
of
of
the
like
world.
there's bits like the Amazon, like.
Well, if you factor in things like
desert.
climate change, there's nothing that has like if you divert a river, it'll affect the ecosystem further down. Like there's
Well, yeah, I
effective-
mean, what you're talking about now is sort of like what's called the Anthropocene, or which is a lot of
The era of humans. isn't it?
basically the era of geological history, which is most related to when humans have kind of started to have a major effect on the
Hysteresis is when you change something,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily going to know what happened. So it's this idea of, I know this is a little bit of a tangent here,
Yeah,
but
it's noise gates.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it remembers
I was going to know that
yeah.
fucking word. It's noise gates.
But hysteresis is the idea that, so say for example, because everyone right now is pushing the agenda that we need to reduce carbon emissions, we can't say for certain that everyone instantly stopping reducing carbon emissions is actually a good thing, because it'll be such a sudden change. It could have 1,000,001 different knock-on effects.
ecologically, you mean?
Yeah, massively. It's and that's what hysteresis is. That just came to my mind.
evolutionary science with that.
Got it in there. Hi, mum.
Anyway,
I think your mum stopped watching after you said she was a xenophobic, animal-loving fucking murderer.
Well, she's still listening. She wait and see if I talk some more shit.
read any Baudrillard?
SeaWorld.
That's a cool name though.
Baudrillard came up with this
Usually.
idea of the simulacra, which is an even cooler term.
Mm.
Not that
Not really.
Baudrillard
I
is a
prefer
term.
the first, but okay.
The simulacra is basically the idea that the representations of things are more common than the things themselves. So our experience with, and essentially they become the thing as far as all intents and purposes are concerned.
Yeah.
So like,
just so I understand, so like cliches of stuff, like the things that are completely overplayed, we begin to accept in our head that's exactly what that is, and when you actually start to learn what the real truth behind it is, you're like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah, similarly, I mean, when Baudrillard uses it, he's more talking about the reality. Reality. It was a big influence on things like The Matrix.
Is it a similar? Yeah, I think I've recently heard the dude who talks about. It was Ham Saris, the guy who was on. He was on that Ham Saris podcast recently. He was like the big dude behind the simulation theory. I think he mentioned this simulacrum.
Nick
It's like,
Bostrom.
yeah, and then he started talking about like if you as a civilization start creating like simulations. Suddenly, there's basically, with any sort of degree of progression in technology, there's going to be more simulations than there are going to be original people.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is that sort of. I think he
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah. So
visual simulacrum and that.
it fundamentally transforms the idea of what animals are, what our relationship with them. Just focusing on the animal aspect of it. Like there are a lot of animals I've only ever seen in terms of taxidermy. You know, lifeless, formless, and I think that's
a yeah.
particularly interesting dynamic. Yeah, especially extinct animals. Like they literally just exist in wax and shit, and just old footage and stuff. And there's this very interesting idea that animals have to be seen to be real.
Yeah.
So, in my dissertation, I draw a dichotomy between stuff like fox hunting, horse racing, and the older stuff like I mentioned fox tossing, cock throwing, and fucking badger baiting, stuff like that. But all those things, because all those things involve the idea of
Sexual innuendo.
yes, but not so. Nature isn't good enough on its own terms in those ideas. It has to. We have to get in there. We have to be involved with what the animal is doing. We have to augment the situation.
You're still talking in Indian.
Whack the rat. Do you mean wanking?
Splat the rat.
Is that Mitchell and Webb?
Yes.
Make the rat.
That one was for Joe. That was for Sojanga. For his benefit.
Joe's not listening to this.
Well, he's on half the podcast.
Make the rat splat. It's just you jerking a rat. Fucking. Sorry. Yeah, I get what you mean. So it's like
Yeah. So those old ideas are basically centered around changing an animal's behaviour, and that is the entertainment. The animal's natural behaviour isn't entertaining. Making it do something like stitching a chimpanzee on top of a bear and calling the bear Wilfred Brown was apparently so funny.
It's pretty funny.
And then just getting a guy to run it through with a sword after all that.
But I think shit, plot twist. I think there's people just love that. They go like, oh yeah, look what he's doing. He's doing a weird thing. He's like, so like with the fox tossing, fox wanking, whatever it is. It's like I'm sure like all the enjoyment is from the fox going, what the fuck's going on? Yeah, and so it's just like we love things and other things that confuse me.
It's manipulating
it's a domination
situation.
Thing.
Yeah, conquering nature. Nature isn't good enough on its own terms. We make the previously unentertaining spectacle become entertaining through our physical interaction, for our immediate presence in the situation.
Is that what David Attenborough and the documentary team are doing there? They're videoing it in order to dominate the nature.
So I used documentaries as the ultimate example, as the opposite of that. But then as you unpack it, you realise it's not. Like
it's like the butterfly thing. It's like collecting butterflies. It's like the ultimate idea of like
So that
like what the Victorians did, where they just went out, shot a bear, and stuffed it, and go, here's the nature that we beat, that we contain. That we
like to pick up on that because my dad is a fucking prime example of that. So you have both seen my parents.
Well, your dad's caged nightmares.
My dad's So my dad keeps a lot of aviaries and he keeps a lot of birds. So he's got 2 barn owls. He's got a whole load of like exotic birds.
Who?
Yeah, not just the wing kind. Oi, oi.
Yeah, most of them got arms missing.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, no. He obviously keeps them, and Mum and I have always like speculated for a long time that it's kind of wrong. I'm not a big fan of it. We told him to stop. But he genuinely has this like weird sort of control complex with it.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of kind of taking a bit of nature and managing it within your own little safe space, and that's a bit of it that you can kind of manage and process and make your own. It's
God.
I was just going to say the idea of the untrimmed hedge being this horrible chaotic thing, and you go in and
I don't know, mate.
Not that kind.
I'm a fan of a Brazilian.
Well, yeah, if you're not in control of it, then you start to fear.
Yeah,
It's
only when it's
going
ordered
to
and
take
presentable.
control of you.
That's the whole Nausea thing with John Paul Sartre, where he just starts freaking out and he realizes that the bench that he's sitting on the train is like just a part of nature as he is, and it's like that idea of what he calls like the creeping realization of like the inevitability of nature, when no matter where you are, you could be, and he's looking at like a cityscape again, and it's just. And then he sees like weeds coming through the pavement. And you're like, oh fuck! You can build all you want. And I think what was that film? I think it was in Fight Club. I mentioned Fight Club every fucking time. It's like there's that thing where he talks about like a panoramic shot over New York City, and like all the freeways are like covered in vines.
Oh no, that's
like,
that's I Am Legend.
It's in I Am Legend. They talk about in Fight Club. It's a beautiful, and it's in a lot of films.
It's fantastic.
A Day After Tomorrow as well. I think they have like some sort of end shot on 2012. Like it's like a lot of stuff where they show like the ultimate fear that they put into the audience is like a city which is like civilization being overtaken by nature.
Well, even things like Jurassic World.
That's literally what that is. Isn't it?
Jurassic Park's a great example. I think Tolkien with the Ents, basically washing out Isengard. It's been like this idea of horror and simultaneous just desserts for humankind for a long time.
Well, Tolkien specifically hated analogy, famously. So it's more a case of that's coding. It's just happenstance that he used those ideas.
Well, or subliminally, or subconsciously without realising it.
It's an archetype, isn't it?
And likely because he took so much inspiration from myth, which uses loads of metaphor and imagery.
I don't think it's really a mistake that Hobbiton is this place that's so peaceful and harmonious with nature, whilst Isengard is a fucking foundry where they're burning down
it's a
Fangorn.
military, industrial city, and like evil is industrial. It's
like, based on Bristol.
I did. Oh, that's cool. That's gonna change my.
So Saruman and Lurtz have fucking West Country accents. Find the halfling.
No nonsense about finding halfling. Yeah.
Bert Lush pins.
What about and there's loads of myth where it's just like it's like that fucking. It's like
so hang on, does that mean that Eye of Sauron is just on like the Clifton Suspension Bridge or something?
Basically.
Shit, it's got dark really quickly.
Pretty much.
Well, it's like in all Tolkien stuff, like industrialism is like another word for evil, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they always talk about like I can't remember the original one, the one where Morgoth is.
Tom Bombadil.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Tom Bombadil Gold.
He's literally fucking nature.
He's nature, isn't it? And there's like Mordor's just like fumes and steel and pumping out foxes. Like the ultimate evil is just Saruman just ragging foxes. just him and Lurtz just tossing a fox.
Anyway,
can we talk about Princess Mononoke?
Oh my god!
When the forest spirit gets shot in the face. It's like literally sort of
obviously Princess Mononoke, that's moving more into Eastern stuff.
Same sort of thing though, isn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Just wanted to mention
One of my favourite animes.
It's very good, I really like that. But it's got Billy Bob Thornton doing the voice for one of the characters in it.
Oh, I didn't know.
What?
Yeah, the monk.
He's the monk, yeah.
You know the monk who's like going and doing loads of shady shit. It's Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah.
Man.
So there's this idea that you, I guess animals aren't real unless they've been. I mean, this pervades everything. It's not just.
Is that what
animals.
Zoo is as well? It's like we're conquering nature by bringing it back. Like
the idea that unless you record or take a photo of something, it didn't happen, and obviously that extends to animals too. So even with the most harmonious and progressive examples, take Country File. They have live videos so that you can watch a badger in its den.
But I think that's because we're so removed. We don't.
Yeah.
I think it's like we don't know what a badge is like. We kind of reach a bit low.
So yeah, I think this is overall a positive thing. I really encourage that kind of thing, like looking at. But I the speculative side of me can't help but that's a kind of voyeurism.
Yeah, it is voyeurism. I literally
and that it's like it's not just good enough to just leave these badges where they are. If you truly respected nature, this wouldn't be.
That's what we are as a species. We're just like curious.
Yeah.
So we'd be sat around just like digging ants out and going, "Hey, this is all right." Because I'm all right with this. I'm happy with this.
Because I mentioned to you and I about and you mentioned to me about the idea of like studying something and destroying it because you're so curious about it. I think it might actually be Baudrillard who says this when he talks about tribes. There was a tribe that a load of people went to study ethnographically to live among them, and guess what? They fucking wrecked their culture in studying the culture. So there was nothing left to study after they studied it. And you said about
archaeology, which is rife with examples where antiquated archaeologists would destroy very precious geological evidence in fossils because they didn't really know how to handle them back then. They didn't really knew exactly what they were.
I think I was actually talking to you about this the other day when we were talking about like Hemingway when he was on his boat. And he was like saying he was like in love with like the way like the river systems work, and he realised once he actually got good at sailing, once he understood it, just completely ruined the beauty of it. Right. I think that's a lot of things. It's like the more we understand, we have this insatiable thirst to understand things, but then when we do, we're like, it's kind of ruined it. It's just
that novel sort of.
Yeah.
I think beauty comes from a lot of time. I think beauty does actually come from mystery. And true inspiration, can only come from something realistically that surprises you.
Right.
And I think that is why I'm trying to think of a good example. Think about it. Pretty much everything good that happens in your life is something that's realistically unexpected. Even if you have strived to get there, it's still a better result than what you expected and you're happy about it.
I did have a burger at Weatherspoons earlier, which I did order.
It
was a pretty good experience.
Spoons Burgers, it is a gamble. I'd rather play Russian roulette, to be honest.
Coming from someone who used to work at Spoons, I agree.
I'd say most happiness comes from fulfilling some sort of long-term goal though, rather than like an unexpected thing. That's just like surprise, and then you go like up, and then you just go back to baseline.
But fulfilling a goal, the happiness stems from the fact that by fulfilling it, you've had to take that chance of whether you were going to succeed or fail, and it's still an element of surprise in I didn't fail, I succeeded.
every endeavour I do is like, shit, I've got my legs.
Yeah, but when you break it down, it's not like you're guaranteed to succeed. There is an element of dice rolling in anything that you pursue in the pursuit of happiness or meaningfulness, and to that extent, I would argue that is an element of surprise, something that's not necessarily expected, not necessarily a given. So you're telling me that every day that you set out to do something, you are 100% you're 100% certain this is a fact I'm going to succeed.
Well, yeah, most things I do.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I know, but is that you just being like really confident about yourself, or is that
just like most things you don't do things you don't do like most things you don't do aren't like actually that risky at all.
Yeah, but
like, the riskiest thing you do is probably like driving to work or whatever.
But that's still quite vague. I'm saying in terms of like. If you actually break it down, because you're a teacher, you spend all day doing a lesson plan, you're really proud of it, you think it's going to be a success, you get in, that class just for whatever reason are just pissed off that day and it's an absolute flop.
Yeah.
You were certain it was going to be great. That's a
disappointment.
Precisely. A disappointment can be a surprise because you were expecting it to be good, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you have an expected outcome in your head, and usually that's the outcome that happens.
But that doesn't mean that it can't surprise you.
Right, but your original assertion was that like pleasure happiness comes from a novel experience or from something.
And I'd say most happiness comes from having a goal in your mind and then fulfilling that goal to either the same degree or a better extent. Whereas like purely surprise is just like fucking hell, I didn't expect that.
No. I think you're misinterpreting what I mean by surprise. I mean by how can I say this?
Anything where something pays off, do you mean?
It's where something pays off, you weren't guaranteed for it to pay off, regardless of how confident you were.
Yeah.
No matter how arrogant you are in your ability to succeed in something, there is always
Spoons Burger. Like you like let's not say it's spoons because you know you can get a pretty dry.
I was going to say because there's always that
Foreskin
chance it comes up.
I mean, it's like most people.
You can be insanely.
I've never really had a bad one.
Everything's
But yeah.
got chances, but I just think,
precisely.
I think it's like,
that's what I mean by surprise.
you can get happiness. You can get real, true happiness from a cup of tea in the morning, just chilling out.
That's not a surprise.
You're not like,
Yeah.
fucking it!
Oh, it's got out of my hand!
You've thoroughly preempted the future world.
I think we're reading into too much to what I said about surprise and taking that quite literally.
Right.
I think surprise is just the fact that things can go good, things can go bad.
Maybe the unknown. The unknown.
Yeah, I think we're reading too.
Or like
when I said
conquering the unknown.
when I said surprise,
Conquering the unknown might be a thing, and then we're back to that idea of like.
That's part
No,
of
I know what you mean, because
order
ultimately
and chaos again.
most people want to be kind of in control to a certain degree. You want to be at the wheel of your own life in most regards, but yet still when something out of the blue happens, it kind of
I think
you use that kind of like childlike sense of rejuvenation.
Using your analogy, right? You want to be at the wheel of your car, but you don't necessarily want to know all the route of where you're actually. So you don't. If you're driving somewhere, it's like you don't. In life, you don't necessarily want to be able to know every single thing that's going to be coming on your way, every single aspect of the route, but at the same time, you're the person in the driving seat. You're trying to order the chaos that is that is emerging, and you can say, well, that is part of how that meaning is sculpted is from the sort of balancing between trying to order this the unknown elements.
And when I say surprise, perhaps wasn't the best word for it. I don't mean like a kind of pantomime-esque. I mean, it's just that. It's just that kind of that underlying reminder that everything that you do in life can either succeed or fail, and when it does succeed, you feel good, and when it doesn't, you can feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And that, so maybe surprise wasn't the right word, but it's the fact that getting something right isn't guaranteed. No matter how much you like to think it is, it's not, and deep down you know that as well.
No, but it does. I did take your point. It does feel good when good things happen, but it's like one of those things where I think it's like.
I think planning and expectation.
I think also from I think having an idea of what you want and then that coming true is better than just a thing happening. Right. So it's like a preempted thing that you've thought about for a long time, and then that goal coming to. It's like if you're coming home and you're like, fucking hell, I want that Weatherspoon's burger. I want that Weatherspoon's burger. Yeah, it's like that's better.
But then you go to get your Weatherspoon's burger and you find £1 million on the floor. You weren't expecting that, but that was a nice surprise, wasn't it? Would you rather have that Weatherspoon's burger? Now you could buy £1 million.
How are you finding £1 million on the floor?
We're back to surprise.
It's RuneScape money. It's a big pile of coins.
Is it a £1 million check?
You found $1 million money.
You can look so fucking shady.
The point is, you got to think about the use of language we're using. You're planning to get you're not saying I'm getting that. Realistically, everything you do, you plan to do because you know that it's still not 100%. That what you're going to do is going to go to plan.
Yeah, 100%.
And that proves my point. That's what I was trying to say. Is that nothing that you do is certain, and it's that uncertainty.
Like we said, it's conquering chaos.
And then a positive outcome.
You feel good when you conquer chaos.
And that's what I meant by surprise.
When you find order out of chaos, it's like, oh, that feels good.
Exactly.
I made an impact. I did something out of.
It's sort of. In some way can be more satisfying. I think it's partly if you're going and doing a presentation in front of class, for example, and then some unexpected thing happens, but it's always better. You happen to overcome it in the moment. That's going to feel much more rewarding.
Yeah, exactly.
Say if someone like a kid just says some really difficult question and he puts you on the spot, but because you prepared enough, and even though you didn't prepare for this question, you actually overcome the challenge. Even though that was something that was unexpected, that was an element of chaos.
That's an emergency. That's an emergency. I think it's like there are going to be emergencies in life, and it's nice to have an idea of what's going to happen. But if there's an emergence like that, that wouldn't be like, hey, this is cracking. You'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah. Then this is just like another thing that you need to sort of factor
stress
into.
And release. Yeah, that's
I think
it's
tension and release, isn't it? It's that order chaos. Someone's thrown a +4 for chaos, and then you go, okay, well, because I've already got +9 order, I've got some fucking Apollonian shit on my side. You then can take the chaos and you'll sort of stride a little bit more. Whereas, like, if you were just on that knife edge and you were just on getting it done, and then someone throws a little bit more chaos. You're like,
fuck. I think control is the crux of what makes people happy.
I don't know, because I think letting go of control. I think too much control just doesn't make people
Right,
happy.
but that's the point. It's like,
Because-
if
some people do.
never go out for the
Having-
presentation, you have the ultimate control because you never
Yeah,
put yourself.
that's the perfect thing. And
Yeah.
there's a thing called analysis paralysis where you just go like, the reason why a lot of people will go, oh, I'm not going to do this, is because there's a chance of failure, and the best way to never fail is to never do anything. And it's like one of those things where
Neutrality.
you're 100% safe, and then
Yeah,
you might for example go and play 900 hours of fucking a Brutii Total War campaign because you're never gonna fail in that. But I think it's like it's from overcoming those little failures. I think you can get a lot of like happiness out of negativity and sort of confronting bits of chaos.
Absolutely, because when you put anything that
But
you do,
allowing space for that chaos is like going. I think, like you were saying, allowing space for that surprise.
yeah,
So you're not going in so control. Like, unlike what we were saying about the chaos and the control. If you're going in so controlled and your entire focus is control, a tiny little thing, you're like, fuck.
It's
You're
one
like,
of
please,
the things that makes religion so just attractive. Is because within religiosity, you have this.
Religion is stacked.
You
religion thick.
you have this.
No.
You have this idea of control in your life and
None of
control
that.
in the nature of things, the nature of everything. You have a place in it, and I think that gives people a sense of control over.
It gives them a sense of place. I think you nailed it with a sense of place. It's like there was I can't remember. There was actually someone talking about it too.
Existentialism and
It was they were talking about Jonathan Haidt, and they were talking about that fucking coddling the American mind.
Yeah.
They're saying people actually quite like it when you go. It's like the people on the campus are saying we need Big Daddy to come down and tell us that we cannot have these certain fancy dress uniforms or whatever. So there's a certain point where you just go, too much chaos. I want there to be an authoritarian strongman to come in and take control of it. I think that can be a bit dangerous.
I think with some religion, I don't know.
I think religion leaves that because you got the ultimate strongman, which is fucking God.
Yeah, it's this
You
mix,
like-
it's this mix between humility and accepting your humble place and everything, and having this big thing take control.
Also, that
But
you
also-
have a place.
Yeah, knowing the place is the ultimate thing. But also, I think that's slightly confusing because you're not really lower than God. You basically are God because you know God's will and you're on a mission from God and you're going to join Him later on. It's like you're not really under divinity. You are part of that divinity. So you get the best of both worlds. You get every part of it.
Is that part of what you think Christians have? That little sneak in, like, hey, we're just as the basic God. You think it's a little like wink. They go, hey, yeah, we're just below you, big guy. With him. So isn't that enlightenment, just knowing that you're God and everyone around you's God? And
Yeah, well, it's knowing your place and everything. Yeah.
case closed. Religion's solved.
Yeah.
We've just cracked it in this room.
Pack your bags,
We're
boys.
done.
We're going home.
Yeah, but to just come back to that point about order and chaos. Yeah, I think
yeah,
the better way to put it is that order can be tyrannical, not necessarily in the sense that we think about it in terms of just like there being some overpowering order that can enforce a lack of, say, colour or variety in one's life, but it's more the fact that that an ultimate form of order is also colourless in the sense that a lack of going for opportunity, like we said, is one of the ultimate forms of order, like you said, analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And so it's like the reason why it is useful to introduce elements of chaos is because you can't, because every time you do anything, you're letting chaos into your life. Every time you walk out the door, there's chaos as being like a certain level of chaos, but it's always, the way you should always do it is approach it, with a level of chaos that is not overwhelming.
So is that to say that chaos is almost like, you could draw like a quicksand analogy, chaos only really exists as a problem when you fight it?
Well, I think
when you resist.
I think it is good to resist chaos. So it's like the fundamental undertaking of being human is to like get enough chaos that you're like
That you're
on the edge,
progressing.
Yeah.
but you're not like fucking having.
That's
a
personally
meltdown.
what I'd like.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to unpack what you guys
the
are saying.
order-
The whole
Order
point
and
is
chaos.
you have to indulge in a certain level of chaos for any degree of progression.
Yeah,
I'm packing it even
yes,
It's the
further.
risk reward element, linking it
yeah.
back to nature. So if the alphas didn't go out of the tribe and kill the saber-toothed tiger, we'd all die anyway. So some people have to take that risk. Some of them would die along the way, but then life would go on that cycle until one alpha succeeds, effectively.
Are we so sure there's a difference between a fundamental, complete difference with no bleeding in between of chaos and order?
Oh no, it's a spectrum. It's like a dichotomy, isn't it?
Like autism.
Yeah, basically.
Literally.
So it's like you going and like, I don't know, like you walking outside is like you going from order and you're just going like, oh, a little bit of chaos. Yeah. If you went outside naked, running through the street, shouting some fucking mad shit,
like that Coney 2012.
That's a little bit more chaos. you're inviting a little bit more chaos into your life.
Let's say you're totally at peace with chaos. Where are you there?
Well, I think no one's totally at peace with chaos, because chaos is like chaos would be like you in the middle of a firefight in a Rwandan genocide. That's like absolute chaos, right?
I think
that's like, oh shit, like terrible things are happening. There's no way around this. Yeah. This is like,
Yeah, we're framing this as control though, but let's say the ultimate form of control is to say we have no control. Does that fit anywhere on the spectrum?
No, I think yeah, somewhere around the middle. And I think there's
control is the ordering of chaos.
Yeah, yeah. So control is over here. Control is like you're sat in a room where you're filled with nutrient paste or whatever, and you can control everything, and you don't do anything. You don't experience anything which is challenging to your sort of point of view. You're just like existing. I think that's like the ultimate control, or you're like, I think that would definitely do. But it's like you're playing everything around you. You're like Laplace's demon. You know every single fact of the universe, and there can't be anything that surprises you. That was like the ultimate control, and the other is like the opposite. And I think you need to be floating around order and chaos, sort of just a bit more into chaos than order.
Quick question. We may have answered this already. I just want to double check.
We have definitely answered everything.
Yeah, because chaos. My understanding of chaos, and maybe this is based on the Jungian archetype, is that chaos isn't necessarily a bad thing, because obviously chaos is associated with creation, with birth, and that from chaos can come what we would perceive as good things, as the creation of new things. So just to clarify, are we all in agreement that chaos can be a good thing? Just because all the examples I've been hearing of chaos have been like Rwandan genocide.
That's like extreme end. You got Matrix Architect.
Wouldn't you say though that the extreme end of chaos can also include like the fucking creation of worlds? I'd say that's pretty extreme. It's pretty. It's pretty mental. So then surely the extreme end isn't just inherently a bad thing.
Well, I guess then we go like the extreme end of order is just like singularity, and like the stage just before the Big Bang. So it's like that would be extreme end.
I think these terms are a little bit too binary.
Well, yeah, I think we're just sort of going Apollonian, Dionysian. We're just sort of going like good and bad, and I think there is like an element of chaos where it's just like improvisation is like in music,
So in say like chaos theory or whatever, we're defining it as a system where the initial conditions. The very tiny changes to the initial conditions of a system give rise to very, very different outcomes on the system. And that is kind of in a way a sort of fairly mathematical definition of how you would define chaos, in the sense that it is something where the initial conditions can give rise to such unpredictable, unseeable, consequences that it becomes increasingly uncontrollable, and that's the point. But you have to introduce certain amounts of chaos so you can actually have any degree of progress and whatever. So the point is, yes, you're constantly riding that line. You're constantly riding that line where you're introducing manageable levels of chaos into your life, because that's all you can do. Yeah. Because all you can do, live in a certain state of chaos, but constantly be trying to order it in such a way that you get progress. And
it's a fantastic way of thinking, because you go for a bad thing and you go, oh, this is good. This is a level of chaos that we can handle. This is a level of chaos that's driving progress.
That's why the Taoists had yin and yang. Like that's why it was so. It was literally
not a negative thing.
Yeah, precisely. The white and black was seen as coexisting. You have to have both of them in your life in equal measure to have a truly whole life, and that
exactly.
Yeah. So taking that conversation away from existentialism, back to animals.
Yeah,
we were talking about
hell of a digression, but good.
I think that was very good.
Fun,
So that idea of kind of a spectrum of control, I think, is useful in thinking about animals. So this is my kind of speculative animal ethics grounding, kind of where I think we should probably be thinking about it. This is kind of how I finished my dissertation. So I actually said about there's a pub in Bristol where they have a lot of cats running around, and it's that
That's doing my head in.
it's that inevitable.
Trading standards, mate.
It's fucking it stinks in there.
Health and safety close, you dead.
But there's
Sorry, Karen, please continue.
there's a very harmonious
It's the
atmosphere.
first input, like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You just get possessed by a cockney. I'm some peas.
There's a really harmonious atmosphere in this pub. It's really serene. It's really nice. Humans and animals existing, kind of cooperatively, I guess, because there's less control over the animals
Well, no, 'cause
than.
they only let cats in. They don't.
They let people in, otherwise there's no fucking custom.
no, but like, yeah, it's like less control over animals. Yeah, you let bear in there.
They're rhinoceros.
It's like it's
Sure.
just cats are nice. Cats are like, we accept cats. They're on that spectrum of like they are pets.
Sure, yeah, but I mean,
Animals eat food.
You
I'm
let
mostly talking about how we can look at the grey area between the exploitation and, completely left alone. This grey area between where pets exist, of domesticated or captive, and I think the only way you can really do that, so the only way a zoo can be good ethically, is to basically exist somewhere between control and letting them go. Because basically in this pub there was a door where all the cats would come down. This was the main attraction. Like we said, it's inevitable that people are going to want to fucking grab a cat and squeeze it too much and go, oh, a cat! Yeah, someone's had a few pints, they'll ring out a cat, yeah. And it's just fucking...
cat in a pint.
It was fucking hilarious. They were pouring them in pints and stuff. They were just falling all over the bar, sleeping on the bar. So one of them vomited on the bar. It's like...
I'm not gonna lie, this sounds like your fucking communist utopia. This doesn't
Well, that is
sound-
Bristol,
I'm not
mate.
fucking confident about it.
freaking out already.
But there was. I don't even really like cats.
Here.
I don't even really like cats, but everyone was just very at ease. It's a nice thing to have in some pubs. Everyone likes an
They all
animal.
got fucking toxoplasmosis. They've all got parasites in their blood.
Point being, the door was open at the back behind the bar, so all the cats knew where to go if it all got a bit too fucking rowdy and too much. It was kind of like a release valve. So I think that's a very good way to look at things like zoos and stuff. Like, can these animals exist somewhere between their wilderness state and a position where we can enjoy them and be entertained by them as a spectacle?
Mm-hmm.
Can both worlds exist at the same time, or can we be somewhere in the middle in that spectrum?
But I think that's probably documentaries, isn't it? If we film them because they're in the wild and we're just like perving on them. But I think it's like cats aren't. They're the only animals that chose to live with us. Like we haven't domesticated them. They domesticated us. They just came to live with us. Dogs we bred from wolves. Cats were just like, hey, look, these guys.
Oh, I think there are other animals that do that as well, like to a lesser extent, like house martins and things. And
Yeah. They use us as a thing, but so.
Cats think we're terrible at hunting, which is why they give us a mouse.
Yeah, literally. But I don't know. I think because houseman's always got like a way out. But I think the whole point is like
cats always have a way out. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got
the
the
door
cat
out.
flap.
They can always just fuck off, can't they? But
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's like,
But I think more dog owners are maybe starting to see that side of things as well, like encouraging animals' natural behaviours and not being too authoritative over an animal.
I don't know. I think that's fucking bollocks. Because it's just like if you do that and then you wonder why your dog assaults a toddler, and it's just like I want to see what that meme is.
Sorry.
I'll have to.
Disrupting the group.
We'll let that.
We'll see I think it's like the point was like a zoo. It's just that it descended from that fucking Victorian thing, like you were saying.
The animal
like,
circus, yeah.
The animal circus, and it's just like they say it's a conservation thing. All they're doing is breeding other animals for zoos, and then occasionally they'll pump a few back into the fucking.
Yeah, so at one end of the spectrum we have the animal circus, and that elements of that still exist in places like SeaWorld. So again, that's harking back to that.
Yeah, SeaWorld's not great, is it?
That idea of augmenting nature, of making it do something, like a tiger jumping. Tiger isn't just good enough to look at it. You have to make it jump through a fucking hoop. It's like a fucking.
It's a spectacle.
Vernon Dudley in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Move! Make it move! It's that shit.
That's the best analogy I've heard for that. It's like Vernon Talent.
That's
And
a good reference.
At the other end, you've got like leave it totally alone. We're just going to do breeding programs and introduce this creature back into the wild.
But that's not leaving it alone.
Yeah, well,
If we leave it alone, just fucking die. So it's like
so that's why I think
breeding programs aren't like-
augmentation can be good, but it has to be augmentation with the grain of
I think
what they want to
this
do.
is the first time
it's
that
got to
we've
be fine balance.
I think it's the first
Yeah.
time that we've realised the impact we have. It's like, but like we didn't used to do this with our animals. We would just like exploit them like a resource and then go, oh shit, they've all died.
Right.
And it's like now we know our place, we can sort of go, oh well, we have to stop these things in order to do that. It's like
And I think your point about like owners introducing more wild behaviours in dogs, I just think it's just
Fucking
like
stupid,
so
yeah.
stupid.
No, not.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's this idea of being, I guess, selective about the behaviours. Some things are good, some things are bad. But like,
this is like anti-vax.
I'm
This is what this is.
I'm not saying dangerous
This
behaviours
is
in
how we
dogs.
get
I'm not
there.
saying encourage them to bite.
No, but it's saying don't encourage them to be socialised. You want to socialise them so that they are the least risk to everyone else around them.
When I say
they're
encourage-
happier as well.
When I say encouraging
Yeah,
a dog's natural behaviours, I mean letting a dog having certain freedoms rather than
What does that
having.
mean though?
What is its natural behaviour? Because like a sheepdog, its natural behaviour is to do stuff that humans have trained it to, like have bred it to do.
exactly.
Yeah.
It literally its natural state is something that is domesticated. It's
Yeah.
like it is an animal that gets cohabited with us now.
I'd say a sheepdog might be a bad example though, because sheepdog they're born with ridiculously high levels of anxiety. They're ridiculously what's one of the big five ones?
Neurosis.
Yeah, they're very
neurotic
incredibly
animals.
neurotic, which I think I've always speculated this. It's a little bit twisted that we've bred an animal to be like
No,
that.
because if you see working sheepdogs are very happy animals. I think it's sheepdogs put in the wrong
100%.
context, which
yeah,
get
but this is
very nervous.
Yeah, I know, and this is the problem though, is because there's so
It's not
many
the
people
animal.
like my
Right.
parents.
Yeah, so it's
who are
natural. It's
sheepdogs
natural.
that aren't.
It's natural
not,
behaviour.
It's not the animal. It's never the animal. It's not
Yeah.
the animal's fault.
It's natural behaviour is to enjoy wide open spaces. This is what I mean. You affirm what it wants. Like, don't dress a pug in. Someone came.
Don't allow a pug to fucking live.
don't allow a
Don't
pug
Well, exactly.
Don't. You're talking about like
It can't even
interfering
breathe.
with nature.
The
Don't-
first basic
don't-
function.
don't
Pug is just
destroy-
not even vaguely a wild animal.
Yeah. So
No.
it's
It's the start of a
once
vigilante
the
killing pugs.
once the breed is alive is what to do with them, but it's also to do with how we breed these animals.
I think the best thing to do for all pugs is to actually kill them.
Someone came.
I genuinely think it is. I think it's a species that.
Well, I think we should stop breeding them.
I think the
Yeah,
entire,
stop breeding
I think
them,
the
I
entire
agree.
species is like basically on a one-way track to devolve into like a point where its entire existence is pain,
think
and that's
What breed of dog is it? The one that has its brain grows.
Yeah.
It might be a bulldog.
It's-
Pugs are just one
No, it's not
example.
called.
There's
I can't
loads.
remember what they're called
It's
now.
so
and the-
twisted,
And
and
the pedigree
it's-
versions literally just suffer like horribly.
and you'll see, and they have like fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll see people, and these are the same people who post like, oh, he says, recycle your milk bowls, and it's just like they're fucking spastic dogs, like brains coming out his
It's
ears.
not just little dogs
suffering.
though, and this is the
horrible.
problem. I mean, Alsatians are a prime example. German Shepherds, those
Yeah,
dogs are
Germans,
bred to have sloped backs, and that's seen as a very desirable quality for
Yeah.
a show dog. It fucks them.
Yeah,
They
so things like
can't-
crafts and things. I think.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can't operate
pedigree
their back
breeds,
legs
yeah.
at like 8 years old. Their life expectancy is so much shorter than other dog breeds, yet they're
Yeah.
amazing, powerful dogs. Why?
Yeah, like
They're not like a pug, you know. they're
pedigree breeds. Yeah.
Yeah, they're phenomenal working animals. They're viciously loyal. I'd have an Alsatian over a pug any day, yet they're still being fucked over by abnormalities that we've bred into normality.
Yeah.
I like that. You can keep that.
Yeah, but I think stopping all pug breeding is just a really nice way of just killing
Yeah.
them all.
Yeah, so
I mean, you just
It's a
ensure
sustainable way,
that
yeah.
they never have.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think a lot of pedigree breeding should have same as knives.
I just
should
didn't
be
want
fucking
Peter
stopped.
to take it out of context if anyone from such other organisations.
Who's Peter?